And as the conflict continues to rage, it is Gulf states that are under near daily attack from Iran. In the latest news, drones targeted a fuel tank at Kuwait airport, causing a fire. You can see it in the pictures there, although there were no casualties reported. Now, today, both Kuwait and Saudi Arabia say they have repelled fresh drone attacks, also from Iran. Joining me on the programme now is Natasha Lindstaedt. She's a professor at the University of Essex, and she's joining me to talk particularly about Saudi Arabia, but about the Gulf states more generally as this conflict approaches its first month. Good to speak to you, and thanks for joining us today here on France 24.
Thanks for having me.
First of all, the New York Times is reporting that Mohammed bin Salman, the de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia, is now pushing Donald Trump to keep this war with Iran going. It claims that MBS sees this as a moment to destroy the clerical regime in Iran, thus reshaping the Middle East quite fundamentally. How do you view that?
Well, yeah, that's what's been reported by the New York Times, and this is somewhat different than what I had heard from when I was talking to Saudi colleagues, Saudi experts that were saying that the Saudis did not want to get involved at all in this conflict. They were hoping for de-escalation and were hoping that the conflict wouldn't start in the first place. And seeing that now the Gulf states have been under attack, with time, this has changed the views of those in Saudi Arabia, but also in the UAE. The UAE, of course, is the country that has suffered the most attacks, like over 300 ballistic missile attacks, over 1,700 drone attacks. And Saudi Arabia, of course, has been attacked as well. And they just now see that they cannot coexist with this hardline Iran regime. And if the U.S. were just to leave and have some kind of partial victory with the Iranian regime intact, that's going to make Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states very vulnerable to subsequent attacks in the Strait of Hormuz, which is where 20% of the oil passes through. Now, while they have built pipelines, both UAE and Saudi Arabia have built these pipelines to pass the oil through. There's nowhere near as much oil that can pass through these pipelines. So they're really vulnerable to continued attacks by the Iranians. They're worried that there could be drone attacks as well. And then the other issue is, what if Iran emerges more like a failed state, something similar to what happened in Iraq in post-2003? Then there could be all these other violent non-state actors, maybe coming from the Iran Revolutionary Guards, that could continue to attack Saudi oil refineries and other vital infrastructure.
So what's the best case scenario then, do you think, for Saudi Arabia at this moment?
So according to the New York Times, the best case scenario is that the regime is ended, or at least some sort of pliant regime is in its place that is friendly to the Gulf states in particular. And so that they no longer fear that there's going to be attacks on their key infrastructure, or particularly in the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, one of the big parts of Crown Prince bin Salman's economic plan is this Vision 2030 that requires a lot of foreign investment. They want to be an international business hub. They want to attract a lot of tourism. And all of this is really bad for business. So they think in the short run that they may be willing to suffer this conflict going on for months. I heard somewhere around 9 months mentioned that they would be willing to withstand if in the end the result is an Iranian regime that is far more friendly and where they don't feel vulnerable to attack. They want to feel like in the post-conflict situation, there's some sort of deterrence that has been established, that they're not worried that their economic interests will be vulnerable.
And if this conflict does go on for another 9 months or so, how damaging is this going to be for Saudi Arabia in terms of its oil infrastructure and the economy more broadly?
It's definitely incredibly damaging. I mean, there were some experts saying this is one of the biggest energy crises that we've ever seen before. And with a country like Saudi Arabia that is so dependent on oil, of course, this is going to affect their economy. They're going to take a hit. But we've seen that there have been other countries in the Gulf that have been hit much worse. I mean, namely Qatar. Its economy has been affected the worst. They had this huge attack on one of their refineries that's going to take 3 to 5 years to repair. The UAE, as I mentioned, had withstood the most attacks it's countries like Oman and Saudi Arabia that had not been attacked, relatively speaking, as much. And Saudi Arabia is a much bigger economy that is probably going to be able to weather this. But what they feel that they can't withstand would be some sort of situation where Iran is either incredibly aggressive and vindictive, or a situation where it's a failed state, and that will have longer term consequences on Saudi Arabia's growth plans.
And I wonder how much influence you think Mohammed bin Salman has on Donald Trump on this issue. It has been reported that Trump respects MBS to some extent, that he has his ear.
Right. I mean, I would have thought that he would have been able to influence Donald Trump to not attack Iran. I mean, that's what they were able to do last year when Netanyahu and Israel put on the table to assassinate the Ayatollah. And it was the Gulf states that were pressuring Trump not to do so because that would lead to all kinds of instability and all the basically the things that have just happened. So we see that while the Crown Prince bin Salman is very influential, so is Netanyahu.
Just a final question for you, Natasha. You mentioned Qatar, but do you think that Gulf states in general are aligned with the Saudi point of view right now, that they want this conflict to go on long enough to really destroy the Iranian clerical regime? Or are there some that say, look, we've suffered enough, it's time to stop?
No, I don't think they're aligned. And I also think there are different views coming from the public who have been absolutely distressed by this, have found this to be incredibly stressful. And the regimes themselves, I think there will be different opinions between the UAE and Saudi Arabia on the one hand, who often at times have competed with one another, and some of the other Gulf states like Kuwait and Qatar. So they're not completely aligned. You also have Oman, that is the country that's been the least affected, and they're trying to play some kind of mediator role. And the press releases, at least that they have stated that they're hoping to end this conflict as soon as possible.
All right, Natasha Lindstaedt talking to us there. She's an expert on the Gulf region. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.